Okay. Hi, everyone. Hi, Megha.
Hi, Lior. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining Ignite. Good afternoon. Come on, you can do better. Good afternoon, everyone. All right. All right. So first thing first, Megha, I heard that's the first time you are presenting at Ignite, right?
That's true. It is so special to be here, represent our team's work, and show what's possible with it.
Awesome. All right. So today's session is all about Azure Arc, architecture patterns. We have a packed session for you guys. First thing first, let me introduce myself. My name is Lior Kamrat. I'm a principal product manager inside the Edge and Platform organization.
Hi, everyone. My name is Megha Tiwari. I lead partner ecosystem and enablement for our IoT and Edge products.
All right. So like I mentioned, today we have a packed session. First thing first, we're going to talk about our adaptive cloud approach. You might have heard of it. So we're going to dive a bit deeper to what does that really mean, okay? Like I mentioned, we have a packed session. So we're going to walk you through a customer that is struggling with what they're doing today, but how they are transitioning using Azure Arc and all the peripheral services that Azure Arc enabled, the architecture patterns that are around that. So we're going to dive deep into the world of unified operations, intelligent IT ops. We have some cool demos around that as well. How do we do streamline of software delivery across cloud and edge? We'll talk a bit about data pipelines across cloud and edge. And we'll finish things off with some evaluation experience and how to get started. Sounds good? All right, let's do this. So, kicking things off with our adaptive cloud approach. You might have heard other presenters talking about this, but what is adaptive cloud? So if you're coming from that space of Azure Arc, right, you're probably already familiar with the silos that are happening in organizations, right? Obviously, everyone here are IT pros, and we might have some developers in the audience, OT, IT, like all these groups of people are trying to build something together. But there's a lot of challenges with that because these group of people are, a lot of the time, just siloed. And what we're trying to do with this adaptive cloud approach, we're trying to approach that. We're trying to make sure that all of you are getting what you need in order to build these enterprise solutions. So adaptive cloud is not a product, but it's actually an approach that we've been accommodating for a long, long time now. And now we're getting to the point with distributed systems, IoT, edge, hybrid, multi-cloud, trying to bring all of this together. And I do want to say that it's not just about the technology, it's also about how do we bring those people together to build a unified solution. So today's session is not just about Azure Arc, it's really what Arc enables, okay? So that's what we're going to talk about today.
So what does an adaptive cloud approach mean? An adaptive cloud approach unifies siloed teams, distributed sites, sprawling systems into a single unified controls, operations, data, application, and security model, which empowers organizations to apply their cloud-native technology, AI, into their distributed IoT, edge, hybrid, and multi-cloud environments. What this does is it enables a diverse set of teams and professionals that build and monitor and operate solutions. For IT teams, they are empowered with AI-assisted capabilities to monitor and operate their systems. Developers are able to build and develop applications at scale across boundaries. And IT and OT and data teams can collaborate and cultivate data from their physical operations. Here on the screen, we see the diverse set of products and services that are available for organizations to start applying the adaptive approach to their services, applications, and data models today. With that, let's kick off our first act and section.
All right, so like we mentioned, this is going to be architecture patterns session. So we want to show you some architecture patterns that we have going on and how this unified approach is basically solving for a lot of the challenges, okay? So the first act is going to be around unified operations across cloud and edge. And to get started, right, what I mentioned here is that we want to take you by the hand with a customer story, right? So meet Contoso Supermarket. Contoso Supermarket, what they're trying to do is they're trying to innovate. They're trying to fix problems. They're trying to take it to the next level when it comes to their operations, okay? So we're going to start things off with the operations, and then we're going to dive into the world of software delivery and also data pipelines. Now, I mentioned the siloed approach. I mentioned the sprawl of services, right? In this diagram that you see, this is really where things are becoming sprawled. You see all these services, but you can also imagine that you have different teams that are handling different services. And there is a breadth of things that needs to happen in order for Contoso Supermarket to actually get things going and actually deploy their architecture enterprise. Okay, sorry, deploy their architecture patterns across the enterprise. Okay, so Azure Arc really sits in the center of all of this. You might heard me saying this in different presentations. I like to use the term project resources. Azure Arc is really that bridge that brings assets, IT assets, from on-premises or multi-cloud and bring those into the control plane, into Azure. And that really, what that gives you, it basically brings those IT assets as first-class citizens inside our API. And the reason that we want to do that is because those assets now can basically benefit out of the rich ecosystem that Azure provides. So that diagram really designed to emphasize, to show you how Arc sits in the middle of that. And that's what you're going to iterate on throughout those demos today. All right, so to do this, let's go on a demo, and we'll get things going, okay? All right. So this is Contoso Supermarket interface. Contoso Supermarket, basically, they are a retail, okay? And people are just coming. You have shoppers. They come, they place orders, and this is the interface that they are encountering, okay? So I just wanted to introduce you with the interface. I'm going to dive deeper. Don't worry about that. But the first thing that we want to talk about is that sprawl of resources. So what I have here is just Contoso resource group, right? A simple resource group. If you will see that I'll scroll here, you can see the amount of services, the amount of, let's just zoom out here a bit. You can see the amount of assets that they have going on, and this is just a single resource group, right? So you can imagine how many resources they have in order to get things going when it comes to the architecture that we just showed you, okay? Now, I do want to focus on this act. I do want to focus on the Arc-enabled servers piece, okay? Now, I'll scroll here, and we can see that we have a bunch of Arc-enabled Kubernetes. We'll touch on those here in a second. But here we have Arc-enabled servers, right? So right out of the gate, we can see that Contoso, just with a simple architecture, they already have 5 Arc-enabled servers. Now, they're deploying across Chicago, Seattle. They have a dev experience, right? And they also have Azure Stack HCI. Now, let's focus for a second about the operational aspect, okay? So here I have a dashboard, and that dashboard basically shows you how an IT operator from Contoso can start looking into the environment, okay? So again, we're focusing on Arc-enabled servers for this one. So let's see that in action. I'm going to scroll here a bit. We can see that we have the Arc-enabled Kubernetes infrastructure. We have the Arc-enabled servers and basically the slice and dice between Linux and Windows. And the nice thing about that in this dashboard is that I can basically go dive into each one of the assets and start taking it one step further. So as an IT professional, I can go here to the Chicago host. Let's just kind of dive in here. And because this server that is deployed in Chicago in the store running the entire operation, because it's Arc-enabled, you're also taking advantage of the extensibility model of Azure Arc, right? So Azure Monitor, Cloud Defender, like all these things. This is really the power of Azure Arc. And this is what I mean when I'm saying projecting resource in order to take advantage of the breadth of Azure, right? So here, this is the Arc-enabled servers from Chicago. And let's just take a simple example. We'll go here to Insights. And we can see here under performance that this server is installed with the Log Analytics agent, and because of that, we have the Azure Monitor integration. And again, remember, this server does not live in Azure, okay? So that's where we're starting to see that glimpse of unified operations, bringing things together. So Azure Monitor is one example. Let's come back here to the dashboard and see what else we have to offer here. So this is the Kubernetes environment, and here I also have security. So we can see also the compliance state of those servers in the context of Microsoft Defender for Cloud, right? And the extensions that are deployed. We can see that we have also the Update Manager, okay? So if you've been following, you know that we announced the new version of the Update Manager, right? And we can see the status of those servers, like where do they sit right now in the context of compliance, and obviously a breadth of a lot of other things that you can look at. What are the top updates that needs to be rolled out? And this is really, again, this is the notion of an IT operator. So that's really the first act, kind of how the IT operators are starting to get a glimpse into the environment, okay? So this will set the stage to the other acts that we have coming up.
So we saw that there can be lots of infrastructure, resources, devices, application that we can have across different locations and sites. Now, if you're in IT, you may be wondering, how do I manage all of these resources and environments and make sure that I'm on top of everything that is going on and I'm able to be productive and efficient in the way I manage everything? With Microsoft Copilot for Azure, this becomes super easy. And if you're following all the Copilot news, you might be feeling left out, that there is Copilot for GitHub, there is M365 Copilot. Now with Microsoft Copilot for Azure, we are able to generate deep insights quickly because it knows your environment, it knows the context that you're operating in, it knows the resources that you have, and it is able to discover new cloud functionality and answer questions directly from product documentation and the Learn site to help you do complex tasks faster. Let me show you how this can work for edge scenarios. So for example, you have Arc-enabled devices across different locations. These could be factories, retail locations, restaurants, hospitals. You have multiple sites with multiple devices. Now these devices could be running Windows, Linux, VMware, and as long as they are Arc connected, we're able to get Arc telemetry and their status in terms of health and telemetry out of them. And here in the table, we see some examples of different edge scenarios that I may be interested in. I may want to know how my edge resources are doing in terms of status and health, and I may want to know if any alerts have happened at a particular time or on a particular resource. So as long as I have these devices are connected, and with Azure Monitor metrics as well, I'm able to apply LLM processing to answer questions in simple natural language. With that, I actually can show you in a quick demo. So here, I'm going to initiate Copilot on Azure. Once I do that, I'm interested in knowing how my Arc-K8s clusters are doing. So I have a simple prompt, summarize my Arc-K8s clusters that I use. And within a few seconds, it gives me a nice summary and status and alerts of my Arc-K8s clusters. Next, I'm interested in my HCI clusters and knowing how the health is. So I use a simple prompt here again, summarize my HCI clusters, and it again shows me a summary and status. It looks like I have some alerts, and I want to learn more about these alerts so that I can dive in and take some action. What I expect to see here is a summary, as we can see here, and severity of the alerts that I have going on a particular resource. I want to actually click on the affected resource and see some of the details. I next want to know if there are any anomalies detected on this particular resource to make sure that I'm on top of any issues that may happen right now or in the future. This spins up an actual investigation which goes and scans the resource, scans the alerts that I have, and provides me with an in-depth report of what's going on. The root cause here looks like I have insufficient memory allocated to my cluster here, and it also provides me with some recommended steps. I want to know more, so I click on See More Details to go into the analysis itself and dive deeper into some of the metrics. So here we can see the investigation summary, and I can click on the resource that is affected and start diving into the metrics itself and see exactly when some of the spikes are happening. Here I can see, there are 2 spikes that are shown here in the time frame that is shown here for a particular node that I have in this cluster. And I want to go into Azure Monitor. So this is showing the monitor metrics. And if I want, I can, I can just see firstly the spikes that are happening, and then I can also dive deeper into the log itself to go further in and take action based on the recommendations, but also have this contextual data and view over a period of time available so I can take action. This is just a glimpse of what is possible with Microsoft Copilot for Azure for edge use cases. I hope that you're inspired to see how it can help you in your task to make sure that you can save time, find root causes to problems, resolve outages, and restore services in no time. With that, I would like to invite Jonathan on stage for our next segment.
Come on, come on. Give him some claps. Oh, Jonathan?
How you doing, Leo?
All right, so Jonathan, the reason that we wanted you here is to talk to us about Dick's Sporting Goods. But before we do that, who you are, what is it that you do?
Fantastic. So thanks for inviting me, Leo. So my name is John Hathaway. I am the Senior Director of the Platform and Infrastructure Group at Dick's Sporting Goods.
Yeah, so Jonathan, usually I do this on YouTube, but here we're doing this in person. And the first question that I wanted to ask you, the reason that we want to bring you here is to contextualize what we're talking about here in the session and bring it for a second to the real world. So you guys at Dick's Sporting Goods, you had like a lot of challenges. We wanted to talk about some of those. Share with me and the great folks here, what were those challenges?
Absolutely. So like a lot of enterprises, as you grow over the years, you adopt different technologies, you adopt different strategies. And when you look back, you look at all of these different tools.
Yep.
And instead of just one tool, you end up all these little tools, and you maybe have 10% of this value in this tool over here, and over there you're maybe getting 20%. Mm-hmm. And the challenge we've got is over the time we were growing, we're adding new capabilities. We have nearly 900 stores that we're trying to manage all of these different server environments and cloud and data center. And we were adding more and more tools, but we weren't getting more and more efficient. We weren't being able to drive more and more value as we needed to.
And that actually, it resonates with me a lot because as we were talking about these siloed operations, right, that really brings this to life. So how did you guys solve for that?
It's a great question. So we looked at what we were trying to do. And so if you look at the nearly 900 stores we have, we were pushing virtual machine images, we were building and baking these golden images and pushing them over these broadband connections. Mm-hmm. What we really wanted to do is how can we get to what we coined our one store technology approach? And that one store technology approach was how can I teach a store to be atomic? How can I teach it what good looks like? And then empower the store to bring itself up to that level, to come up to that expectation. Mm-hmm. And so we divided the problem into the big problem into three sections. Mm-hmm. We divided up into hardware, we divided up into compute and platform, and then we divided up into application deployment. And the reason we did that is we had about 8 months to push this new platform out before Black Friday. And so by taking that systems thinking approach and understanding those dependencies, we could allow the application, the dev teams, to just use any flavor of Kubernetes they wanted. We didn't really worry about it. But the bigger problem was how do I now manage nearly 900 Kubernetes clusters in many, many different states, all the way across the US.
Yep.
And this is where we started partnering with the Microsoft team, the Azure team, and started looking at how can we start retiring half a dozen tools, all these different scripts, automation, PowerShell modules, Ansible playbooks. How can we start taking a different approach? And this is where, whilst we're allowing the application teams to go off and develop, and they adopted a GitOps strategy, and we're using Flux CD operators to start staging applications, being able to take all of our clusters, being able to bring them into a single pane of glass, being able to unify our support, our engineering teams, our application teams in one single tool set. We've been adopting Azure for a number of years now, and being able to bring all of that footprint, being able to teach these stores to be atomic, to really capitalize on this adaptive cloud, enables me, instead of running effectively 900 mini data centers, how can I now run one unified infrastructure? And we started using Azure Arc. We tied Azure Arc agents into our Azure environment. We were able to start seeing performance optimization opportunities, security. We're able to get a holistic view across not just our Azure teams managing our Azure environments, but now we're enabled to unify the Azure team and our storage team all under one umbrella and have a common tool chain and a common tool set, meaning that we could react, we could adapt quicker. But the biggest achievement for us, especially when you think of it as a retailer, being able to get new things out to our athletes, to our customers within minutes. If we see something, we need to make a change. Using GitOps, we're now able to standardize, we're now able to position what we want the stores to become, allow them to bring themselves up to that standard, and we're no longer pushing. We're allowing the stores to pull. We're allowing the stores to look at what great looks like, and we can declare what we want each one of those stores to be, and then allow Azure Arc and GitOps to bring it to where we need it to be.
And we talked about this backstage. This notion of atomic store is definitely something that I can relate to, and I think that at this point, we're going to see this in action here in the next demo. Thank you, Jonathan, so much for joining
Thanks
me.
ever so much, dude.
Take
care.
All right. So basically, you heard Jonathan talking about this notion of software delivery, right, and atomic store. But what does atomic store really mean? Atomic store means that you have a desired state, right? You have a store, you need to innovate, you need to deploy a new version, okay? So let's bring that back into Contoso Supermarket. So in this act, I want to talk to you about software delivery. I always like to do these GitOps demonstrations because you see the value just like that. And that's what we're going to do right now. So the architecture that you're seeing here is the checkout queue monitoring service for Contoso Supermarket. That is the service that is running on every Kubernetes cluster in each store that Contoso Supermarket has, right? And it's running basically multiple things. One, it's responsible for how the store managers will interact with the queue monitoring, how many people are actually approaching the queue of that cashier, right? And also, how do they actually monitor and physically monitoring the video feed that is coming from the store, okay? So that's the architecture, that pattern that you see in here. Now, to demonstrate this, I wanted to show you a bit of a funky demo, right? How GitOps meets Kubernetes, that meets AI, that meets Azure Arc, right? And I mentioned this at the beginning, right? Azure Arc is really just the enabler. It's almost like an implementation detail, but that's the beauty of it. It enables you to do things that maybe you didn't thought that you can do that. So let's see that in action. So before I showed you the shopper interface, what you're seeing here on screen is basically the store manager interface, right? And the store manager, right, they don't care about GitOps. They don't know what it is. They have no idea, right? What they need to do is they need to operate the store. But there is actually a DevOps team that is supporting them in the backend, right? Platform engineers, people that are responsible for delivering the software. So let's see that in action. The first thing that I'm going to show you is just kind of a fun thing. You can see that as I'm clicking through the cashier, right, you can see the load getting distributed across the stores, and we can see like a slice, a real-time slice of the like 24 hours slice of how the store has been acting. But a more important thing here, if you're paying attention, right, is this little guy right here. So you see how that live view is actually disabled right now. It's grayed out. Now, the live view feature is part of the queue service feature, and it's responsible for actually activating an Intel OpenVINO inference model, okay? That model is responsible for people proximity in basically in the checkouts, okay? So the store managers can monitor, if something is happening. Now, right now it's disabled. Now think about the situation where Contoso Supermarket platform engineering team, now they need to roll out that feature to a new store, or they have a new version of that feature. How do they go about this, okay? So let me put my DevOps engineer hat here for a second and take you to the backend. So to see this in action, first thing first, we're going to come back to the portal, and we can already see that. Let's just kind of zoom in here a bit. And we can see that we have multiple Kubernetes clusters, right? We have Kubernetes clusters that represent the store. We have Kubernetes clusters that represent the development environment, right? And some more. Now, because those Kubernetes clusters are Arc-enabled, right, we also have the GitOps configuration and the GitOps extension deployed on top of them. Okay, so we can see here under GitOps, we can see that we have multiple of these configurations, and those configurations are already applied on those clusters. Okay? That will enable us to deploy that new version and do the software rollout across all the stores. Okay, so let's see that in action. Now, I have VS Code here, and this is basically the manifest. Okay? This is what describe, okay, what type of feature or how the feature is going to look like in the store. And you can imagine, right, and as Jonathan mentioned, right, you have canary deployments, you have production deployments. Like, you can't just roll out to production just like that. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to test on canary, right? That's the testing environment, and that sits in Chicago. Now, that manifest that you're seeing here basically describes the deployment of the queue checkout monitoring service. We can see it right here, right? So that's the queue monitoring front end. And what we will do right now is we will going to push a change. And that's why I love those GitOps demos a lot, because you see that in action just like that. So now I'm going to switch to live view enable, okay? And you can see that it's just a simple flag, right? We're going to save this. And before I'm going to commit this change, I'm going to run kubectl get pods on the Contoso Supermarket namespace that is actually watching the pods that are responsible for that service, okay? Now, while this is running, I'm going to come back to VS Code here. We're going to save and come back or go to the Git integration with VS Code, and we can see that we have a change, okay? What I'm going to say is live view or Ignite. And I'm going to push that change. Now, let's pay attention real closely what's going to happen, okay? As I'm pushing this change, I'll switch back to the terminal here. We're going to see this here in a second. So what's happening in the background is that basically we're pushing a new version of the live view, and we're going to see those pods getting rolled real time as we are deploying this new feature. So give it just a second here. And we're going to come back to the store and come back here. Come on, demo gods, you can do it. And give it a sec. Oh, there you go. Whew. That was close, right? All right, so we can see that the pods are rolling out, and now the new version is starting to kick in, okay? So hopefully you can see that the container is already running, right? Container creating and then container running. That's a good sign. I'll come back here to the interface. Let's refresh one time. Oh, bam. And now we have the live view. So that feature that I just enabled is the missing feature for Contoso Supermarket for that specific store, because we wanted to make sure that that machine learning model, right, will operate as expected. So that is GitOps meeting Arc-enabled Kubernetes, meeting AI, okay, and everything just kind of on steroids. So that was a fun demo. Mega?
Thanks, Lior. So we saw Contoso Supermarket unify their physical operations with cloud-to-edge enabled by Arc. We also saw them streamline their delivery process and streamline how they develop apps and push changes quickly. Now say they have developed a point-of-sale application. How can the rest of the organization use the data coming from that point-of-sale application as well as other sensors and edge devices that they have in stores to build a data pipeline for business intelligence by leveraging the power of cloud? Here is a point-of-sale service architecture pattern that they're using. If there is a customer in store, they go ahead and interact with the point-of-sale application to place an order. Once they place the order goes with order details, timestamp into a local database. Within seconds, that information is passed on to cloud with a cloud-to-edge sync process. That sync process takes the details of the order and lands it into Azure Cosmos DB on Azure in the cloud. Once data is in Cosmos DB, it is available to be visualized and for further intelligence and visualization using Azure Data Explorer, ADX. Let me show how that looks like. So here we have the Contoso point-of-sale application where I can see all the items available in the store. I'm going to go ahead and add an apple to the order, maybe some bananas as well, and maybe some chips and eggs as well.
It's a nice selection.
I know, I'm trying to be healthy. I see these items are in my cart. I go ahead and place the order. Once this order is placed, that's when it's landing in the local database as well as the cloud-to-edge sync process is starting for it to be available in Cosmos DB as well. Let me go to my Cosmos DB and see if it is actually there. Here we can see the order details by order date and all the quantities that I ordered as well. Once data is in Cosmos DB, as I mentioned, I'm able to visualize it and take action on the further details that are available. I'm going to do that with
We're good.
By going to the dashboard. So here I have a dashboard that is visualizing the point of sale orders over a period of time. I can see the total orders for the last few days here and see when some of the orders are spiking, as well as number of items in a specific order. So I can see order count over a period of time. And I can also see orders by store location, as well as orders by product visualized here in this nice pie chart as well. Another scenario that Contoso cares about is maintaining the health and safety of their stores by making sure that the temperature and humidity for their freezers maintain a certain level. So the way they do that is they have certain IoT sensors in their stores for every freezer that they have, and that sensor sends temperature data through MQTT Publisher to either Grafana for local observability if you're an IT, or if you're an OT, it's available on ADX as well to visualize and act on as well. I'm going to quickly show you how that ADX dashboard looks like as well. So here we can see the freezer monitor temperature over a period of time. And this data enables not only the store managers, but also people sitting in the office seeing data for multiple stores available in one place to be able to see, are they maintaining the health and standard across their stores? If they are not, then what action can they take? With these two examples, I showed how organizations can build data pipelines from cloud to edge and drive business decisions. And if you have all this data available, you can take further action by either driving that data into building AI models, or by knowing yourself, like how do you want to manage your inventory, how do you want to manage the infrastructure in those locations, as well as in the last case, knowing that the freezers are at the right temperature to make sure that things are running as expected. In those two examples, we showed data pipelines being built from edge to cloud. Now, if you have multiple equipment, assets, and devices available in your environment, and you want to connect all of them to drive a connected physical operation, then we announced Azure IoT Operations this week, which is also enabled by Azure Arc, to build data pipelines across physical operations. What that means is that data coming from different devices, assets, industrial equipment can now communicate with our services, and data is now ready, which is clean, contextualized, and ready for further consumption and action, either by leveraging our edge services to act on it on edge, do edge computing, or drive it to cloud, to databases or locations like Fabric to take further action. So we covered a lot of ground here, covering different scenarios and showing what Contoso is doing across different use cases to leverage the power of cloud, as well as our IoT, edge, and Azure capabilities. If I'm a customer, Lior, how do I get started with all of this?
I'm happy that you're asking me that question, because I have an answer. So let's talk about that for a moment. Before the how they're getting started, I hope that you're really grabbing what we're trying to land here, right? Like I mentioned, Arc is really the enabler. You saw multiple architecture patterns in this session, right? These architecture patterns would only have been possible because of Azure Arc, because you are Arc enabling the server. You have Kubernetes, you can do software distribution, you can do data pipelines. These things, these architecture patterns are what possible because of that integration, right? So we just want to make sure that you're taking all these breadth of possibilities. And this is really the key, the art of the possible. Don't stay just in the servers. Don't stay just in the Kubernetes. Mix it up. Build these architecture patterns, because these are super important. You can innovate, and I hope you saw that with Contoso Supermarket. So how do you actually get started? So you've been following the Arc space for quite some time, and thank you for that. You also might be familiar with this small project called Arc Jumpstart. Arc Jumpstart started 4 years ago, and this week we are excited to announce the productization of Azure Arc Jumpstart. So Azure Arc Jumpstart, for those of you who are not familiar with this project, first of all, go check it out. But for those of you who are familiar with the project, you know the breadth of this, right? Jumpstart provide a lot of scenarios, automated scenarios, and really streamlined way to get started with things. And the most important thing is that the Jumpstart was designed in a way that you don't need to deploy things in your environment. It was designed in a way for you to sandbox all these solutions. And we're covering the breadth of servers, Kubernetes, SQL, data, and as of today, also IoT operations that Mega mentioned. So the Jumpstart universe is really a comprehensive set of solutions that we have. We have Jumpstart scenarios, more than 130 scenarios to this point. We have ArcBox, which is basically a superset of those scenarios, bringing you all the Azure Arc capabilities for Azure Arc-enabled servers and bundle those together, and also for Kubernetes and data pipelines and data services, right? So we have multiple flavors of ArcBox. HCI Box, which has been booming when it comes to the usage of this solution, because HCI Box really allow you to bootstrap an HCI environment in a sandbox fashion, streamlined, automated, single-click deployment. And for those of you who know or in the business of Azure Stack, right, you know that sometimes you just don't have those blinking lights to deploy things. And you really want to try to evaluate before you go and deploy this in your environment. That's what HCI Box is giving you. And Jumpstart Agora that was announced early this year. Jumpstart Agora is really part of our evolution to provide solutions that are designed for industries. How do we actually grab these type of industries architecture patterns like we showed you today with Contoso Supermarket, but bundling those into an experience that you can actually connect to. And it's not just a bunch of automations that are deploying, bunch of services. It's more to that. And Contoso Supermarket, that, sets of mini demos that you've seen today, that's all available to you in Jumpstart Agora, okay? So do you want to see that, maybe, the new website? What do you say? Yeah? Let's do that. Come on, get more excited. All right, so let's see that in action. So this is the new website for Arc Jumpstart. As you can see, Microsoft branded. No one is going to ask me anymore, hey, what is this thing? Is this Microsoft? Yeah, no, I don't know. Yes, it is Microsoft, and I'm happy to share with you that we're productizing this. So what you see here is the new website. Big shout out to our design team. They did an amazing job developing the design for this website and making it so immersive. So as I'm scrolling here, you can see all the solutions. The one thing that I thought to myself, hey, let's just, kind of show you what we did today, but how can you actually do that? Because one of the things that I really like, or to be able to provide people with the opportunity to deploy things after they go through a session like this, right? So how do you go and do that? So to do that, I'm gonna show you Jumpstart Agora. And Jumpstart Agora, here's the retail scenario that we have. You can see that manufacturing, we're working on it, We'll talk about that here in a second. But here's the retail scenario. And that retail scenario is actually going to be around Contoso Supermarket. You can see a comprehensive set of guides, right, that all can be deployed in a single-click operation, okay? You can basically bootstrap the entire operation of Contoso Supermarket and start getting your hands dirty with the value proposition, and not just talking about it, but actually doing. So Contoso Supermarket is one example. You can see all our comprehensive guides here with explanations, with the architecture diagrams, everything that you need in order to get going. So those demos that Mega did, the demo that I did for GitOps, and many, many more are included. So that's one thing. And as of this week, also as part of the launch of the new website, we also opened a new category for Arc, Edge, and IoT, which is a category that we're super excited about because it brings a lot of options to the table, right? Because a lot of the time when you're talking to IT professionals, right, they don't really think about what does that really mean, like an edge in the context of Arc. And as Mega mentioned, with Arc and Azure IoT operations enabled by Arc, there's a lot of opportunities here. So with this new category, Arc, Edge, and IoT operations, we want to start capturing those scenarios and bring those to live in a Jumpstart fashion. So this week, we also released a new scenario for Azure IoT operations. And this is the story of Contoso Bakeries, right? As you can see, we love our Contoso, right? So this is the story of Contoso Bakeries. And Contoso Bakeries will show you, that scenario will show you how Azure IoT Operations and many, many other technologies are leveraged and showing you more architecture patterns. Because again, it doesn't end with software delivery. It doesn't end with, with data pipelines. There are many, many other mini architecture patterns that are included in such big operations. So this is the scenario for Azure IoT Operations. The new scenario is part of our new category for Arc, Edge, and IoT. So that's the new Jumpstart. And with this note, I do want to say thank you for everyone. Our community has become massive with more than 50K page views on average per month, right? It's only because of you. So big shout out to you, big claps to you as well. Thank you so much. So,
Jumpstart is truly a game changer for technical enablement and just trying things out before you actually deploy on your physical devices. It really streamlines evaluation and getting started. Thank you for all the work that you've done.
Definitely. So let's wrap things up with some announcements, okay? Obviously, you've been around all week. Thank you for sticking with us, right? I know it's kind of late. It's Thursday. Tomorrow is Friday. Happy Friday, everyone, tomorrow. And we just wanted to finish things off with some announcements. Right?
I know, I mentioned some of them. I just want to make sure that you capture that we have announced Microsoft Copilot for Azure in public preview this week. Go check it out. It is available on your Azure portal. Just click on Copilot on the top, and it will open that Copilot pane on portal itself. We are also announcing Azure IoT Operations in public preview, as well as Azure Stack HCI version 23H2.
And some of the things that we released this week for general availability are here on screen. As you can see, the first one is VMware vSphere enabled by Azure Arc. And to just kind of share with you a story, 8 years ago, I joined Microsoft from VMware. And when I heard that we are actually developing an Arc solution for VMware while developing the Jumpstart, I was like, that's an interesting intersection there. So I'm also happy to share that this week we announced the general availability for Arc-enabled VMware vSphere, SQL Server auto-patching. SQL Server with Azure Arc has been booming as well. Like the amount of adoption that we're seeing is just insane. And it also ties to the one of the hottest topics in the past few weeks, and I know a lot of you have been asking me about this as well, is the extended security updates for Windows Server and SQL Server. So these are the things that are announced this week. We just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page here. And obviously, this space is so innovative. We continue to roll out more and more and more features as we go. So that was our session. Megha, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Lior. You've been great.
And thank you so much for staying.
Thank you, everyone.